Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're learning Masechtas Yevamos, Daf Ayin Zayin. We're going to begin on Ayin Zayin Amud Aleph, about 12 lines from the top, with the word katanoi. So we were learning the din of an Ammoni and a Moavi. You're not allowed to marry. A woman is not allowed to marry such men. However, like Boaz was able to marry Ruth, even though she was a Moavite, because we learn out the drasha, Ammoni v'lo Ammonis, Moavi v'lo Moavis. They Rabbi Yehuda. And Shimon Omer, Shimon says it's actually a different reason. Al davar shelo kidmu eschem b'lech b'mayim, because when we were in the midbar and we were traveling around, they didn't provide bread and water for us. And we say darkashul adam lakadim. It was really the men who were involved, as we saw above. However, for women, it's kol kavuda bas melech panima. They're not held accountable for the misactions of the men, and therefore it was only the men's mistake and not the women's mistake. Dorish Rabbi, Ma'idachsiv. What does the following pasuk mean when we say in Hallel, Pitachta lemoiseroi, that it opened up this scrape? So Amar David lefnei Kodesh Baruch Hu ben Shalom Shnei Moseros, the straps, that there was Shnei Moseros Shahoyo Olai. I had two straps upon me, as though like to hold me back. Pitachtam, and you open them up. There was like two things holding me back, as though to say that there was something wrong. Rus HaMoaviyah, the fact that I was related to Rus, who is Moaviyah. V'na'ama ha'amoinis, because of both of them. However, says Rashi, Pitachta shitarta es hanikevos, that you allowed women to be able to marry Jewish people, even though they come from Ammon or Moab. Dorish Rabba, Ma'idachsiv. What is the, and when it says Na'ama, Rashi says that the imo shel Rechavam, that is the mother of Rechavam, umimena yotzu Malchabes David. So what does the pasuk mean? Ma'idachsiv Rabo Sasi Sata Hashem Elokai Niflei Secha, that many you have you have done your wonders, Secha, and your thoughts, Elenu Panos, Elai Lo Nemar, Ela Elenu, Mam Shahaya, Rechavam Yosh B'Cheiko Shel David. It comes to tell you that Rechavam was literally sitting in the lap of David. What does that mean? So Rashi says, Olai Biel Rechavam Ben Mini Chashavta L'Toiva. You thought good for me and Rechavam, my grandson. Kishitarta es hanekevos. By allowing the kevos, you allowed us to become king. Amrlo alai v'olecha nemrushtei mikros halalu. So it's actually two psukim. Says Rashi b'shah shenim shachti, the time that I was anointed, ato ba'asil gedula, now I came to greatness. Umikarov paskuli gedulazu. Actually, I didn't realize this was already predestined, as we're going to actually see in Megillah's Sefer. Darish Rabba, Ma'idachsiv Oz Amarta Hini Ba'asi b'Megillah Sefer, Kosav Alai, Omer David Ani Amarti Atobasi. I thought basically I was only chosen now, as Rashi just said. V'yadati sheMegillah Sefer Kosav Alai. It was actually already pre-written. Chasam Ksiv, in Bereshis, it says Hanim Sa'is, which is referring to the angels saving Lot and his two daughters. This was already known from before in this time. So Hacha Ksiv Matsasi, David Abdi B'Shemin Kodshi Meshachtiv. So we see that even back in the time of Lot, it was already understood that it would be okay for David to become Melech. Omer Omer Yochanan Bas Geramoni Kshir L'Kahuna. Now, the daughter of a convert from Ammon is allowed to marry into Kahuna. From the union of an Ammoni to an Ammonis, that is allowed. So I'm like, Rava Bar Ula, come on, who's this like? That we allow a bas ceremony Again, Rashi says, Kos hakadaitach amoini shnisgaira ishto. It's referring to an amoini who his wife converted, imo, together with him, v'harasa v'leidas b'kedusha, and they end up having a Jewish child as they were Jewish. So in other words, we're assuming he had an amoini and an amonis woman, man and a woman, and they had a child, so that child is allowed to marry Kohen. Rabbi bar ula, come on, Ikra Yehuda. If this is like the Shita of Yehuda, Haimer Basker Zachar Kabas Chol Zachar. The daughter of a ger is like a chol, so a chol obviously cannot marry a kohen. So according to Yehuda, that certainly this can't make sense because a product of an amoini and a moinis would she's a bas ger, so she should be a chol. The Ikra Rabbi Yosi pshita. According to the Shita of Rabbi Yosi, who says that she is not a chol, then it's a davar pashut. Ha'omer af ger shenasa giyaris. Even if you have a convert marrying another convert, man and woman, bito kasher kahuna. He says that not only if it's just the daughter of a convert, but even if, let's say, the man and woman, the husband and wife are both converts, they're still their daughter will be kasher kahuna. Okay, so it's like Rabbi Yossi. V'chitema b'hanach deru'uin lova b'kahal. Maybe in the Havamina, it would be only those who are fit into coming into the Kahal Hashem. The ein royal of Kahal low. Maybe the Havamina is that you would think because an Amoini and a Moinis are not mutter to come to Kahal Hashem, so you would think that's not the same thing. So maybe the time Rabbi Yossi allows a bas ger is dafka if she was just from another nation, but from Ammon maybe not. Kamashmulan, the chiddush is that this woman is still allowed to marry Kohen. So minale. So how do we know? Says Rashi, minat tesilon hi dimishum de in ruin levabakal bita psula yos mishar gerim. Why would we even have this havamina to think that because her parents were not mutter to come to the Kahal, but they converted, that the daughter will also be possible more than any other convert? So the answer is minole. Diyov mikoyin gadol b'almana. Michael koyin gadol b'almana shechen biyaso ba'avera. We know it's chayvi lavin. An almana, a widow, cannot marry koyin gadol. So we're going to learn out from that. What does that mean? So it says Rashi, the hoyel bein roy bo bito chalola upsula kahuna. So we see that if someone does not fit into the marriage, so then the child becomes a cholola. So therefore, maybe it's the same thing here. That's what we would have thought. No, but chol yichiach, mal cholol shechein yitzirasa ba'aveira. But when it comes to a cholol, the man, his creation was in the veira. Kohen gadol yichiach, v'chazar adin lo rizek rizeh. They don't have the same common denominators. They have things that are different. Hasad hashav shemhem she'enu boroiv kahal. They're not considered to be boroiv kahal. Ubita psula avkan she'enu boroiv kahal ubita psula. So therefore, you can maybe connect the sad hashav to that. Says Rashi, Mal kohen gadol biyasu ba'avera timer ba'amoini shenasa amoini she'en biyasu ba'avera. There's no avera, and Ammoni can marry an Ammonis. So chol zachar terchiach. Okay, so mal sad hashav shehem shechen yesh behen sad avera. They both have a sad avera. Fine. So dilma vadi ba'amoini shenasa bas Yisrael kamert. Really, what we're talking about is actually there was an avera involved. And it was an Amoini man that married a Bas Yisrael, which he's not allowed to. The chiddush is that even in that situation, the daughter is going to be kosher, even though the man should not have married her. Says Rashi, just see the rest of these Rashis. Shabias Aviv Imo Ba'avera, the Bia of the father and the mother, the Kohen Gadol to the Almana is an Avera. Timer Ba'amoini Shen Yitzirasu Ba'avera. So we said Kohen Gadol Yechiach Shen Yitzirasu Ba'avera, Uvito Ma'almana Psul. Asad Shabashem Shen B'Rav Kahal. Enek Kashar Rov Yisrael. They're not like regular people. Shar Yesh B'Kuan Sad Pogum. They have some pogum. Kohen Gadol biyasu ba'avera, and Chol yitzirasu ba'avera. So Moini in a royal of Kahal. So he said, so we're talking about actually where the man himself, who is an Amoini, married a Bas Yisrael, which is an Avera. So therefore, that's what it's coming to tell you. Even so, the daughter is still kosher. So Afal Gad Biyasu ba'avera bita kosher melein the Chiyasu Ravin Amar Rabbi Yochanan Basker Amoini ubas Mitzri Shenis. What's the din of a Basker Amoini, which is what we're talking about? It means that the father had relations with a Bas Yisrael, and they had a daughter. So Bas Mitzri Sheni, Rabbi Yochanan Mekshera. So we see according to Rabbi Yochanan that actually is kosher. So therefore, this is according to this opinion that even though the Amoini was Isaac Baver, that he married a Bas Yisrael, nonetheless their daughter is going to be mutter to kahuna. Even though Reish Lakish disagrees. Reish Lakish Amar Psula, why? Because he learns out from Kohen Gadol to Almana that just like that relationship, the child is a chol. So to this improper relationship, the child will be a chol, cannot marry Kohen. Rabbi Yochanan Mekshera, why? Why would this be allowed? As we continue to Ayin Zayin Mebez, Titani Rabbi Zakkai Kamei Rabbi Yochanan Ki im besul mi'amav yikach isha. So why does it say mi'amav? So isha l'havi giyaris mechane shehi kasher kahuna. This is it's telling us that she is actually giyaris mechana. She's mutter to kahuna. Says Rashi, Kloimer she avi ima mi'am echad. It means when the mother and the father are from the same nation, but no, the kedusha and married as a Jew. Lafuki Gerim Moini Shinasa Bas Yisrael. It's coming to exclude if they're from two different nations. And a Moini to a Bas Yisrael, the Lav Mekana, they're not like the same nation. Hoyel Biyasa Ba'avera Bito Psula. According to Reish Lakish, they no. Because in that situation, Bito Psula. And Amun to a Moini, you're right, the daughter will be kosher. Again, according to Rav Yossi and Moshitas. So B'yermeli Ani Shaina Amav Mi'amav. I learn out Amav Mi'amav. That he could marry even a basula who came from two different nations. Namely, even if we're talking about an Amoin who had married a Bas Yisrael. And you say it's a Gioris Mekana Basulo. No. It's even if they're from two different nations. Then it would still be acceptable. That the daughter will still be able to marry a Kohen. So my shnei amamin. Ilema amayni shenase amaynis. Is it referring to that? Umay mishnei amamin. What does it mean, two nations? The Zachar Masur and the Kevas Mutaros. Now when it comes to the product of their relationship, a boy will be aser, as we saw. A daughter will be mutter, because it's Moabi amayni amaynis. So hani giyeres mekana. That's the same nation. It's the same thing. Because it's Amoin to an Amoinis. As we're saying, it must be talking about two different nations. And nonetheless, we still see possibly that may mean that it is allowed. It is allowed. Again, it's a machlokas, whether an Amoini, who is Nasa Bas Yisrael, which is an Avera, whether or not that daughter will be Mutter the Kohen. V'ika di kasher the kuna. V'ika di amri yomer uleyani shaynu ama mi'ama v'habi basula kaba mishnei amamin u'mi'am sheyesh bo shnei amamin. A nation that comes from two nations. So since Ammon, there's a chiluk between the man and the woman. V'yad amrit gyaris mekana basula. Okay. L'hachlishna bas mitzri sheni d'ksher kahuna menole. Now there's another lashon that said a mitzri sheni is ksher kahuna. V'chitei mediyah of mi amoini shenasa bas Yisrael. Malo amoini shenasa bas Yisrael shechein nekevas mutaros. Right? So you can't compare them, because if they have a daughter, even though it was an Avera, but the reality is that the whole issue is the Ammoni, the man. Ammonis is mutter, so the daughter is mutter. However, when it comes to a Mitzri Sheni, no. Mitzri Sheni, Shenasa Mitzri Shniya Yochiach. What if you have a Mitzri Sheni who marries a Mitzri Shniya? That we know that their child will be kosher, boys and girls. And Mal Mitzri Sheni, Shenasa Mitzri Shniya, Shechen Ein B'Yasa B'Avera. It's not an Avera. Maybe that's the reason why their daughter is going to be mutter. Ammoni Shenasa Bas Yisrael Yochiach. that even though it's an Avera, still we're saying according to the Shita, the daughter is kosher. Now we understand when he says Amma me Amma, but I didn't know what he was talking about. Now I know. Kios Rabbi Shmuel bar Yehuda Amar Kachi Tanakame. This is what he learned. Isha moinis. If the woman is in a moinis kshera bina, then her son is kosher. Mi amoini posel. Uvita mi amoini kshera. So Mamed bar Murim ba amoini ba amoinis. We're talking about a man and a woman who are both from Amoin, Shnis Gairu, they converted. Bita mi Amoini. If the daughter is from Amoin, Psula. Yermule Puktene Bulbra. Go outside. Madi Amad Isha Amoinis Kshera. That's what you said, a woman who's an Amoinis is Kshera. Amoini vul Amoinis. You're right, because the Pasuk says Amoini vul Amoinis. So obviously, a woman who is an Amoinis is Kshera. However, Bina mi Amoini Pasal. And also when you said that the son from Amoin is possible, you're right. To Amoinihu, because he's an Amoin. And that son is possible because he's a man. However, Uvita mi Amoini Kshera. You said the daughter from an Amoin is Kshera. So what does that mean? Ilim Lavaba Kahal, to marry into Klal Yisrael, Hashta Ima Kshera Hima boy. Obviously, it cannot just talk about getting married to any Yisrael, because even the mother's allowed to do it. Because a minus is allowed, so obviously their daughter is allowed. El Kahuna. The chiddush is that the daughter from an Amoinis is even allowed to marry to Kahuna. When it comes to the man and the woman, the husband and wife, they converted. Bita me Amoini psula. However, when it says the daughter from Amoin is psula, so what does that mean? My bita me Amoini. It's the same nation. El must be a Moinish Nasa Bas Israel. So we see in a Moinish Nasa Bas Israel is Pasal the Kahuna. In other words, he's basically saying it's not true. The din is, even though again he says that whether or not this is actually the case. What the din is by a Moinish Nasa Bas Israel, that's kosher Pasal. Mitzri v'adaimi was surin. So we actually had a machlokus when it came to a Mitzri and a daimi. When it came to the nekevas, is it third generation or is it miyad? So he said a kal v'chaymer because by Amoin, which is asr forever, Moab, which is asr forever for men. So for the women's mutter right away. So Mitzri, which the man has Pesach at generation number 3, kal v'chaymer should be. The girl should be allowed right away. So my tshuva. So Rabbi Barachano and Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Deikol Meimer Arayos Yichichu. You can ask a question by Arayos. Shul Osir Mehen El Ad Shleisha Dairis. Echad Zacharim ve'Echad Nekeva. Says Rashi. When it comes to Arayos, Shul Osir Mehen El Shleisha Dairis. Bas Bito Asurlo. That when it comes to Arayos, it's generally for 3 generations, up until one's grandchildren. So because of that, we see it doesn't make a difference if it's a zach or a nekeva. So you don't say, it can't be when it comes to dor shlishi that it's only referring to zach or not nekeva. Nekevas are right away. We see by Arayos also it's 3 generations. We don't make a distinction between zachar and nekevas. So Malo Arayos shechin kares. Yeah, but we're more strict over there. So maybe that's the reason why we include even women. So mamzer yochiach. So mamzer will come what? There's no din kares by having bia, but nonetheless we say the daughter is like the sons. We don't make any distinction. So yeah, mamzer shechein enu ruel v'bakahal. They came into Klal Yisrael. The oilam as opposed to arayos, in which there's obviously you're not supposed to have relations with arayos, but those individuals themselves are mutter become to kahal. Olam arayos uchichu. So there really is, we could ask the question about Arayas. The Chazar Din, that they're all Aser. When it comes to Arayas, men or women, it's the same, 3 generations. Even when it comes to women, it's 3rd generations. Now, there is a Sad Kares. When it comes to Arayas, so then how could you learn out to a Mitzri Shlishis, or a woman who's a Mitzri? Rabbanan Michalol Dechayvi asay. Actually, according to the Rabbanon, who says that there is an answer, he'll say like this. He'll say from Chol, says Rashi, Mechol Dechayvi asay. Could go on Kohen Gadol who marries an anusa mafuta. She Allah ba'asay besula yikach lo ba'ula. She's supposed to marry besula Kohen Gadol, not a ba'ula. So in that situation, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov over there says that the child will be a chol. Rabbanim chol dechavi asay. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov says Rashi. Fine. So my lo kihechadi karmel huladidi lo severely Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov ladidchu the severely Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov halacha ni oimer. I said the halacha. It's actually halacha. Tanya omer lehem Rabbi Shimon halacha ni omer. First of all, it's a halacha. It's not. There's something which I derived. It's not from a kavachem. Oid mikra mesayeni. I actually have a pasuk to support me. Banim v'loy banois. It says banim, which is sons and not daughters. Banim v'loy banois. So the drasha banim v'loy banois is that the whole issue is only for a Mitzri, an Egyptian male, but a Mitzris, you can marry right away. Never have Shimon. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, how are you? Aimer banim asher yibadol hem dor shlishi. I know you're right. It says banim, which sounds like boys. So hakasav ton beleda. The truth is, the pasuk is totally beleda. Which, what does that mean? Kasav beleda. It's talking as Rashi's nekevas nami suros. It just doesn't mean banim, your sons. It means children. That is, and it says asher yovoldu lahem, giving birth. So you give birth to boys or girls. So therefore, the prohibition of a mitzri is even for a girl. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Ilab Yom Rabbi Yehuda hakasav talon b'leida u'matzah yada v'raglu b'beis hamedrash. If you didn't come up with this pshat about the whole notion is asher yovoldu, it's totally on being birth, then we wouldn't have basically a leg to stand on. Why? So, kivan di omer mar kahal ger mikri kahal, we know that, we paskin, that a ger is considered to be ikri kahal. So as we continue in Chesed Aleph, mitzri sheni b'may yitar. A mitzri sheni can't marry a giores. Okay. Look in Rashi. The last line, Isa, the nekeva sharian, will alter. If it's true that the girls who are Egyptian you can marry them right away, Habu Kahal, Basuris Mitzris, Rishaynu Shniel, Mitzri Rishnu Sheni. So, how could you ever get to generation number 3? The only way they're going to get to generation number 3 is if they marry another Mitzri, a Mitzris. But if a Mitzris is allowed to go into Kal Hashem, that means they're not allowed to marry this Mitzri man. So where it's a dilma di over v'notziv. Maybe it's talking about a situation how can have a third generation is if this Egyptian man violated and married a Bas Yisrael or Gioras, even though he wasn't supposed to. The ilu kasiv kra hari mamzer, the ilu ksiv kra hari mamzer. If the pasuk wouldn't have said it would be a mamzer. The kasve kra the ilu isur kasav, the ilu hater lo kasav. Hari maxer shasar the hater the kasve hasimishum ikra isura huda kasve. Okay, we're gonna stop there. But again, there's this discussion what the din is when it comes to a zachar, whether or not the din is the nekeva of a mitzri, whether it's miyad, mutter, or only after the third generation. TB1. Mahi giyaris mechana. What is this referring to when we say it's a third? It's a giyaris mechana. So the answer is Shavia v'ima mi'am echad. It means that the father and mother come from the same nation. V'haviyasam lo ba'avera, and therefore the B is not an avera, but no b'kedusha, which again we said is a case of, let's say, an amayni to a minus. So that would be a case, as Rashi said on the top of Ayin Zayin Mabez, Kalaymer Shavia v'ima mi'am echad v'nod b'kedusha fuki gera amayni shenasa bas Yisrael the la michanahi. So that's why we said in this Gemara whether or not a bas is you have a situation where an Amoini marries a Bas Yisrael, whether or not that daughter is going to be kosher to Kahuna Adkan.